we're back with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. Our NBA team previews continue in Minnesota with the Minnesota Timberwolves. This is Gerald Glassford. Thanks again for joining us. And here today, got a real special guest who covers the Minnesota Timberwolves for the Minneapolis Star Tribune. Plus, he's the author of Ant, a really engrossing biography of the NBA All-Star himself, Anthony Edwards. Ant, please go ahead and check it out wherever you get your books. It is Chris Hine. And Chris, great to have you on the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, Gerald. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Continued success, first off, with the book Ant. I know that a lot of people,
Appreciate that.
even outside Minnesota, are really curious about this because Anthony Edwards, I guess when we in America, we on the show, our audience, we talk about this, looking for that next face of the NBA. You know, as far as LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, I'm not going to hide it. They're getting old. They're old.
Right.
Let's just put it this way.
Anthony Edwards is not old. Yeah.
Exactly. Anthony Edwards,
Yes.
Victor Wembanyama, Luka Doncic. They're the
Mhm.
faces many point to as far as the NBA going forward. And for a lot of people, Anthony Edwards, they feel can be that next guy. So when you're doing your research with him and you're on him, you're doing the interviews, you're doing the background for that book.
Yep.
What strikes out most as far as what you think will ultimately propel him to that top of the line face of the NBA status, if you believe it will hit that high level?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of everything. I think to be the face of the NBA, first of all, you need the success. I mean, you look at these guys that have been the face of the league for a long time, they have multiple rings, right? I think that's number one when we talk about stuff like that. You have to have the success first. Two, you have to have the personality and kind of a magnetism and charisma that I think, allows you to be successful, whether it's like pitching shoes, pitching, soft drinks, whatever it is. You have to have that kind of that personality that's just going to be able, that people just want more of. And I think Anthony Edwards has that. When you talk to people around the team, teammates of his, he is usually the happiest guy in the room, the most positive guy in the room, the most uplifting guy in the room. Guys, like Kyle Anderson, who have been in the league a long time, will say he's one of the best teammates I've ever had. And I think as he goes along here, he's going to become more and more of a leader. And I think now, as he's entering year 6, that's coming out more and more. I think last year it really started to take shape in year 5, and I think it's just going to be even more this coming season. That more vocal presence in the locker room, in the huddle. Whereas before, earlier in his career, he would defer maybe to some older players because he hadn't felt like he had earned the right to speak up, the right to say stuff. I don't think that's going to be the case now, or hasn't been the case for a while now. So I think all these things, the intangibles, the leadership, the personality, the smile, all of that stuff factors into it. Now the next step is, can you get to the success where you are competing for titles and winning rings to kind of round out that resume? Other than that, I think he's got everything else.
I'll ask you this. In doing so, he has taken a team to 2 straight Western Conference finals, despite all the stuff that's gone on in the background with the ownership change, the ownership fight, the ownership battle, and all the other things that have gone on. They've taken the outside noise, put it aside, and they've gone to 2 straight Western Conference finals. They come back, they get 2 of the 3 free agents that they wanted to re-sign back into the fold. You have 2 developing second-year players that the team is now going to heavily rely on in Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. As far as how this team shaped out over the summer, how do you think it did? How well? Did you hope for all 3 signings? Did you think that was going to be plausible, or did you think they signed the right 2? How did your summer go along as far as what you were thinking for the Minnesota Timberwolves?
It really played out as expected. I think we knew all along that they didn't want to go they wanted to duck under the second apron after being above it last year. And that likely meant that Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who went to Atlanta in a sign and trade, was going to be leaving, because it always seemed like the team was going to prioritize Julius Randle and Naz Reid. We, wrote that. A lot of us on the beat kind of knew that and wrote that all along. And that Nickeil, well, they could have retained him if they wanted to go over the second apron and keep incurring the penalties of all that comes along with. We knew that they were probably going to let him walk so that they could duck under the second apron, and that's what they did. So it really played as expected. I think what they are set up for right now in re-signing Naz Reid for, I think it's around, $25 million a year, Julius Randle for $30 million a year. I think what they've done is not only have they brought back a competitive team that's going to be a playoff team that could make a deep run in the Western Conference as they showed last season, but I think they're set up with enough financial flexibility and pieces and young players to make a big splash move if they want to in the near future. And I think that's ultimately where they're angling. That's me just kind of knowing, covering the team the last couple of years. That's not any inside information. That's just kind of how the NBA is and kind of how Tim Connolly has operated since becoming president of the Timberwolves. I think they are still angling for a big move. I don't know who that is or when that's going to happen, but I think they're willing to be patient and wait for different transaction windows to come and go until the right situation, the right player comes along, and then they strike. I think one thing that Wolves fans have always speculated about is getting a top flight point guard to play alongside Anthony Edwards for the foreseeable future. The team is hoping Rob Dillingham can become that, but Rob Dillingham's maybe on a different timeline. He's only 20 years old, or going to be 20 this season, than maybe where the team is at right now in terms of where they want to compete. So is that what they're looking for? They got in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes in the offseason. They didn't win that. So we'll see. But I still think that the Timberwolves, as currently constructed, while they are a very good team, I still think they're trying to set themselves up to make another big move in the future.
So you're talking about another big move in the future, and the architect to probably construct all that, I'm going to be, as a Lakers fan, sorry to say, is Tim Connolly, because we've been speculating for a while now on his future. Here on the show, we've been kind of really speculating on it, hoping that he might have opted out, because his contract situation over the past 2-3 seasons has been kind of a little bit on the precarious side, because I think he's been even evaluating this over ownership change as far as that's concerned. We were hoping that we would be the beneficiaries of it, because we just don't have the love for Rob Pelinka. I'm not going to be honest with you. I'm not going to be dishonest with you on that. Just have to put that out there. Tim Connolly was one of the guys that we had eyed for that position, but I think you're going to tell us a little bit of bad news, because I've seen reports that something has solidified finally for Tim Connolly's life and career with the Minnesota Timberwolves going forward.
Yeah, it looks like he's opted in to the last couple of years of his contract. And I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody here, that however it shook out, whether it was an opt-out plus re-sign or opting in, that Tim Connolly was going to stay in Minnesota. That was the word from the end of the season onward, really throughout the course of last season too. Tim is very much a family man, and he relocated his family from Denver to Minnesota. And I don't know that he necessarily maybe wanted to do that again in such a short amount of time. And I think he's grown to really like it in Minnesota. The family's comfortable. Ownership situation is now settled for the future. He'll be working with Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez, which is what he thought coming into the job in the first place. So add it all up, and it's not a surprise that he's sticking around for a little while longer.
Can I be disappointed nonetheless?
You can feel free to be disappointed as you want. Yeah. Okay. That's what sports is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we see what he's done. His work precedes itself. And as far as the quality teams that he's built up in Denver and what they eventually did after his departure and what he's done in Minnesota, we just, having an eye for talent that he does is there, and it's just at this point he's clearly proven himself to be one of the top 5 to 10 GMs in the league, if not the best. Depending on who is perceiving it, but yes, he's clearly one of the best in the league at doing what he's doing, and it's well deserved on his part. But he is overseeing a team that has aspirations to go further than it has in the past couple seasons. So Chris Finch, a really underrated coach in my opinion. He outcoached JJ Redick in that first round last year. Clearly, found flaws and things, ways to exploit the Lakers' defense, and also their lack of depth that they couldn't just overcome, which we saw. Tell us your thoughts on Chris Finch, the coach, and how he's able to connect with this team.
Yeah, I think from day one, Chris Finch came in halfway through Anthony Edwards' rookie season. So they've been joined at the hip ever since 2021. And I think that relationship has formed kind of the core of what you've seen over the last 5 years with the Wolves, and bought into what Finch was saying. Finch knew that priority number one for him coming in the door was to develop Anthony Edwards. And as I kind of lay out in the book, shameless promo, Finch coaches Anthony Edwards hard, and he holds him accountable often in practice and in film sessions. But here's the thing, Anthony Edwards is not the kind of player who thinks that kind of coaching is disrespectful or a shot at him. It's the kind of coaching that Anthony Edwards has had throughout his whole life, whether it was his youth football days, and his early AAU basketball days. He's used to guys getting on him. And so Chris Finch has kind of continued that lineage in Anthony Edwards' life of this hard coaching, keep him accountable. Because Ant has a very high work ethic. He just needs a little structure around that work ethic to keep him on the right track when it comes to doing the things he should be doing, developing the things that he should be developing. The other thing that I think is a strength of Chris Finch's is his ability to adapt, especially defensively, to what the personnel is around him and what he's been dealt. It took them a little while when they got Rudy Gobert a few years ago to figure out what exactly their defensive scheme was going to be and how best to utilize Gobert's talents along with Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards and kind of these larger lineups that they have, first with Karl Anthony Towns, now Julius Randle and Naz Reid figuring into the mix. And they figured it out. They figured it out 2 years ago. They figured it out again last year, even with the trade on the eve of training camp of Towns going out, Randall DiVincenzo coming in. They've always been able, Chris Finch and his staff have always been able to figure out whatever Tim Connolly has handed him. And I think that is one of his greatest strengths as a coach. Is it may take a while, and fans were certainly very frustrated at the start of last season. November and December for the fan base in Minnesota were very rough months. This team did not look like it was coming together, that they weren't going to be able to figure it out. But by the time mid-January rolled around and we got into February, they figured it out. They figured it out offensively. They figured it out defensively. And I think just ultimately Chris Finch figuring out what he has, how to play to that team's strengths is his greatest asset as a coach over the last 5 years, because he's done it now with multiple teams, multiple times in his tenure.
Once again, I'm on with Chris Hine. He is a great writer on the Timberwolves from the Minnesota Star Tribune, and also the author of Ant, which is on Anthony Edwards, which you can get right now wherever you get your books. Want to go ahead and ask you this. Is there a little bit of concern after 2 runs to the Western Conference Finals about in certain spots in the lineup, about age, about because Mike Conley is...
Sure, Mike Conley, yep.
Yep, and then Rudy Gobert, I don't know if you want to say at 33, he's getting close to that point where his, beyond his peak. Although if he plays the Lakers with Jackson Hayes starting, I guess he'll probably be young forever. But right. I will say that is there concerns on that? Because again, you have youth in the right places. You also have youth as your backups with Rob Dillingham, especially be playing a key role. who you hope can transition into that starting role ahead of Mike Conley at some point. When does that come, and will it come soon enough?
To me, that is the number one question facing the Timberwolves entering the season is just what happens at point guard with Mike Conley, with Rob Dillingham. I think in an ideal world, the team hopes that number one, Mike Conley comes into this year maybe a little healthier than he did last year. He did not have a good offseason last year in terms of his health. He had a wrist issue that was plaguing him and that was preventing him from really having a normal offseason, and it showed early last season, and Mike didn't really begin to feel like himself till probably about halfway through the season. So you're hoping that he's had a better offseason this time around. Even at 37, I still think there's a little bit, at least a little bit left in the tank. And he's a very, even though he's the nicest guy in the NBA, a very fiery competitor. Mike Conley is, if you get to know him a little bit. So he's not just going to, I don't want to say he's not going to pass the torch to Rob Dillingham, but Mike Conley's going to want to still play at a very high level and try to win a title before his days are over as an NBA player. I think the team hopes that Rob Dillingham pushes him for that starting spot. And if you have that situation where they're both playing really well, that's exactly what you want. But to me, Rob Dillingham's development and just what they get out of Mike Conley this year, these are two of the biggest things that face the Timberwolves this year, because this is also, especially Dillingham's development, this is one of the biggest questions for where they go long term in their future. And what that big move down the road, what it is it for a point guard, or if you think Rob Dillingham this year can be your point guard of now in the future, maybe you look elsewhere for that big move. So I think that is the number one question. I can't really predict it right now. We'll see what they look like in training camp and early in the season. I know that this team, even though it was an up and down rookie year for Rob Dillingham, I think they like what they have. They like how he competes on defense, which was one of the knocks on him coming into the year. They liked that out of him last year. And I think it's figuring out just his shot, getting the shot to be a little more consistent, and just finding that balance of creating for himself and creating for his teammates. When you have Anthony Edwards playing alongside of you, you're going to have a lot of open shots. So I think that's probably priority number one for Rob Dillingham, is just knocking down the open shots when Anthony Edwards draws the attention from you on the floor.
And even though the pressure's not on him now, at some point in the not too distant future, will you be asking those same questions of Joe Berenguer when it comes to Rudy Gobert?
Yeah, I think that's probably more a year, at least a year in the future. They drafted Berenguer to be, I think, a long-term project, and I don't think they really anticipate him contributing to the main roster right away. But they were very encouraged by what they saw in Summer League, especially that first game that he played, when I think he blocked like 2 shots on the first possession of the game or something like that. Very
I think it was 6 or 7 overall, if I remember.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was a crazy Summer League debut. But they liked what they saw overall. Even though he's also French, I think he's a very different player than Rudy Gobert. You see the athleticism, I think he's better with the ball in his hands. And so there's some ways in which he's different from Rudy Gobert. But I mean, to be a defensively oriented big man in the NBA, there's probably no greater teacher that he'll have for the first couple of years than Rudy Gobert. And Rudy Gobert, he's no longer a max player. He's now on another contract, making, I think, around $33 million this season. He took a cut off of what he could have made in order to help the Wolves accommodate the contracts of Julius Randle and Naz Reid this season. So I think when you look at Gobert, what he's making now is probably more in line with the production and the player that he gives you than being a max player, for instance, at this point in his career. So I think that's important to mention when we talk about Rudy Gobert and just where he sits in the landscape of the league and on the balance sheet.
So before we head on out, one of the things I ask as far as for the Minnesota Timberwolves, if everything goes right, if everything clicks, you get the production from the point guard position from both a older and younger standpoint, you get the bench that's going. DiVincenzo if he ever regains that full moxie that he had that last year in New York. I was chatting the other day in regards to that. It's like, man, if DVD comes back really all the way, and maybe the fact that you lost Nikhil Alexander Walker will free up some of that opportunity for DiVincenzo to be even more of a big part of your bench and your rotation going forward. But if everything works out well, if everything clicks, where do you see this team ending up?
Man, the Western Conference is so deep this year that it would be easy to say, oh yeah, everything clicks and they make the finals, but everything could click and they could still run into a brick wall that is the Oklahoma City Thunder in the playoffs,
Mhm.
or let's see what the Rockets look like. How much better are the Lakers going to be in year two of Luka being there? And now that they've had an off season to try and build a team around him, Denver, I think, got better this off season and really addressed some important needs with some of their moves. So everything could go right for the Wolves and they could have a good year. And I think they could get bounced in the second round. I think that's certainly
Mhm.
on the table, just because I think the Western Conference and how the seeding may shake out. You never know how it's going to play out. Last year, the Wolves got a little, probably more than a little lucky. They got the Lakers in the first round, who they ended up being a really good matchup for. Then Steph gets hurt in game one of round two, and they take care of the Warriors in five, and then they were no match for the Thunder in the Western Conference Finals. So they ended up with a path to the Western Conference Finals. Who knows if that's going to be there this year? They could be a really good team that just finds a bad matchup in the playoffs because the West is so deep. I will say, I anticipate now that their top seven are back this season, and Terrence Shannon, Rob Dillingham, Jalen Clark have all been here and got minutes last year. I would anticipate them being a little better in the regular season, that they wouldn't need as much of a runway to figure that out as they did for the first 2 months of last season. So I
Mhm.
could see them outperforming what they did in the regular season last year. But I just look around the Western Conference and I don't know. There's a lot of good teams, and if everybody's healthy come April, it's tough to see how the Timberwolves, even if things go perfectly, are still like better than the Thunder. I just it's hard for me to see right now.
There you go. And like you said, it's all about opportunities and matchups when it comes to the playoffs. If another team does have an injury in the wrong place for them, but the right place for Minnesota or another team, it could be very advantageous. Like we saw Indiana. And Indiana was a team that was not favored to go that far in the Eastern Conference playoffs, but they made it all the way to the finals. Some of it based off luck, some of it based off just the skill that they have. So I definitely get where you're coming at. And like you said, the Western Conference may be a bloodbath with
Yes.
everything the way it
I,
shapes
I think
itself
Chris I
out.
think Chris Finch put it well at the end of the season. There's 15 teams in the Western Conference. 13 of them are going for it, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't have these expectations of really like tanking or building for the future. Almost everybody in the Western Conference, except for like two or three teams, are thinking they're going into the season thinking they're going to be competitive.
Yep.
So and a lot of the teams at the top are really tough. So
And then there's Utah, but we
and
won't
then
go
there's
into
Utah.
that.
That's correct.
But before we head on out, I wanted to ask this: your thoughts on the Lakers? Skinny Luca, as we're recording this, is still
Yes.
wreaking havoc in Europe. I don't know
Yeah.
for how much longer as I record this, but he's still playing well. He's in shape, playing well. Got LeBron now cheering him on from social media. Things seem to be a little bit better as far as that's going forward. The team has picked up the three free agents, two of them buyout candidates in Smart and Aiden,
Right.
Laravia as well. How well do you think the Lakers have prepared themselves for the season, and where do you see their season ending up?
Yeah, I kind of put them in the same mix with the Wolves in that they're contenders. I don't have them on the top tier of Western Conference teams. I think they're kind of in that second tier right now, where again, probably deep playoff run is certainly on the table. I just think year 2 of having Luka and having this offseason to get, especially a guy like DeAndre Ayton in there, who hopefully for your guys' sake is motivated to really play up to the best of his ability this year. But just being able to restructure the roster at least a little bit, and you'll have the deadline as well to do that around Luka after making such a seismic trade middle of last season, I think was important. I think that got lost in the mix a little bit last year because the Lakers finished so strong and then the Wolves took care of them pretty easily in the first round. It's like, yeah, this was an incomplete roster around Luka Doncic. You had to make that trade. You had to say yes to that trade. But when the deal with Charlotte fell through, it was like, yeah, this team is incomplete right now. They need a center. So I think it's good that they had an offseason to at least take a dice roll to address that. We'll see how it plays out in the regular season. But yeah, I just have such high expectations and respect for, like, right now, to me, the top 2. I kind of put Houston. I want to see it with Houston right now. I want to see how it looks. I know everybody, since they got KD and just the defense and everything, the young talent there has them kind of elevated to the level of Oklahoma City. I want to see it first. To me, the teams that have been there and done that now, Oklahoma City and Denver, with the moves Denver made, they're 1 and 2 to me in the Western Conference. And I have like the Lakers maybe in that second tier, along with like the Wolves. Maybe the Rockets are a little bit ahead of those 2, but I just struggle to put anybody above Oklahoma City and Denver coming into the season right now.
Can't say I blame you on that one. I know here in Vegas, that's pretty much where they have both those teams in that mix right there. They sometimes put the Clippers in that scenario as well.
Yeah.
A couple other teams as well. So yeah, definitely thinking that that could be very well the case, and to have one of those teams like Minnesota or the Lakers trying to knock their way into that bubble right now that seems to be occupied by Denver, by OKC, and by Houston. So I definitely agree with you on that one. But before we're heading out, it is cheap plug time. You are doing a lot of great things, and you've got a great book that you need to go ahead and let everybody know about. So please, the floor is yours. What's going on in the world of Chris Hine?
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, I wrote a book, as we mentioned, on Anthony Edwards that came out back in June. You can get it Barnes and Noble, Amazon, wherever books are sold online. It might be at your local bookstore, might not be, but you could always get it off of various internet retailers. And I spent a good portion of last summer talking to a lot of people about Anthony Edwards, his development, and his upbringing in Atlanta. And for those of you that don't know his story, the 2 rocks in his life, his mother and his grandmother, Yvette and Shirley, passed away from cancer when he was 13, about 6 months apart from each other. So the book really details his relationships with them, his family, very influential figures, other influential figures in his life, what happened after their deaths, and how he got to the NBA, along with what was his first 4 seasons in the league. And so about half the book is his life before the NBA. The second half is his life in the NBA, how he became a star, and also a little bit about his Olympic experience in Paris last summer as well.
So I'm popping it up on Amazon right now. It is again available in hardcover, audio CD, Kindle, and audiobook. And I got to ask you, was there any temptation to be the narrator for the audiobook? Any temptation?
I mean, no, I'm kind of glad I'm not. But also they told me that, even if I wanted to do it, they wouldn't let me, because
really?
yeah, they just trust people that they've worked with before, because it's a time and money thing, right? Like recording it, studio time, all that stuff. If you have somebody that keeps stumbling over their words and takes forever to record it, that's a lot of money wasted. So they said, here, we have folks that we'd like you to listen to, and we'll see if we can get them. And so a lot of people like the audiobook. Check that out. I believe, if you have Spotify Premium, I believe the audiobook is just free to stream. So maybe that's one option for you folks out there. A lot of people have told me about that. I have Apple Music myself. I don't have Spotify. But people have told me Spotify Premium, you could listen to it for free.
Absolutely. Even like I said, if you do as far as for Audible, like you said, Spotify,
Mhm.
Kindle, audio CD, hardcover, any which way you can go ahead and get it, please go ahead and get Ant, The Incredible Journey of NBA Rising Star, Anthony Edwards. It's available right now. It's going to be a great Christmas gift for you guys out there if you like and follow the NBA. There you go, Chris. Also, as well, make sure you check out his great work at the Minneapolis Star Tribune. Chris, you've been an amazing guest. It would be my honor if you would be able to stop by back some time during the season, if that's possible.
Sure, yeah, anytime, anytime. Just let me know. I'll make the time.
Sounds good, my friend. It is Chris Hine. Truly appreciate you joining us. Go ahead and check out his book and check out his work on the Minneapolis Star Tribune. And thank you so much again for covering the T Wolves right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.